Okay, so to do the rear brakes on a first gen G20, so that's a P10, you're going to want to get it up in the air, get the wheel off, put it on a jack stand. If you don't have electric impact, to get the lugs off, loosen them while they're on the ground so the wheel doesn't spin on you. Make sure the parking brake is not engaged, because the parking brake is through the caliper on these, and it will lock the caliper up on you and make it hard to get apart. Now on this particular car, this is actually a seized caliper, so this doesn't want to turn anyways as it is, and it's locked on there. I'm going to try to take it apart the way you would take it apart if you were just going to reuse this caliper and swap the pads. It might be a little bit different, but you should be able to get the idea for doing just pads and rotors if that's what you're doing. If not, I'm also changing the caliper out for a reman one. I've already sprayed some of my stuff with rust penetrant. So I've got a reman caliper here. You can see the piston. This has little spots in it. You would need, if you're reusing the caliper, you would need a special tool that goes in here. They sell them basically at every parts store. They look like a cube with different pins on them, and you spin this piston to retract it. Because as you pull on the parking brake, it pulls this spring and lever and it ratchets the piston out and it locks the caliper. That's how the parking brake works on this car. It's not inside of here, which makes it kind of nice because it's less complicated. You don't have this dumb drum brake setup inside of this hub for their parking brake. But it makes it's just something you need to watch out when you go to retract this piston. You need to make sure you turn it back in all the way. This one's already collapsed because it's brand new, so I'm not going to have to do that, but that's just something you'll have to remember. So normally you would start by taking these. I'm going to show you on the new caliper because I'm not sure if this one's going to come apart. You would start by taking these bolts off. I've already pre-loosened these. They will need to be fairly tight when they're on the car. So this bracket bolts to the knuckle, and you lift this off, and your pads would be here. You pull them out, remove your clips. There's a clip that goes inside here. You take it out, replace that, put your new pads in. Then you can pull this bracket off, and you pull the rotor off, reinstall the bracket. That's when you put your new pads and clips in, and you put your piston back over it. And you don't have to disconnect any of the hydraulics if you're just doing pads and rotors. Alright, I'm going to try to get these bolts loose. I'm going to try to take this apart the way you're supposed to. If not, I will unbolt it from the knuckle behind here and pull the whole thing off as one thing. So normally if you're doing just the pads and rotors, you could do these two 14mm bolts here and then carefully lift the caliper up. It's also attached to the parking brake. I need to get that loose so that I can change the whole caliper. So you don't necessarily need to get this free, but I'm going to see if I can get this loosened up. Alright, so this came through. Those are not into the slide pins. The slide pins sit here. These just bolt into the slide pins. So of course, ratchet doesn't fit there. I'm surprised that came apart. That is, because I used a ratchet there, jammed on the banjo fitting. Alright. So you use a socket up here and a ratchet on the bottom. Switch to my power tool here. Yeah, that's really stuck. So, I mean, it's kind of stupid to try to get this apart because it's just frozen. I can struggle with it. I could pry it off just to show you, but I kind of showed you already with the new caliper, so we're just going to go with that. I'm going to loosen this banjo fitting. I don't want to undo it yet because I don't want fluid to come everywhere. I'm going to take the parking brake mount off. So it comes off this way. Now it unhooks from the caliper. It's kind of hard to see. I'll show you when I get the caliper off. Alright, I'm going to loosen this banjo fitting. It's got a 12mm bolt head on it. And do it while the caliper is locked in here so it doesn't move around on me. It's easier. And I'm just going to loosen it, but I don't want to take it off because I don't want fluid going everywhere. So there's two bolts behind here holding the caliper to the knuckle. They're 17mm. And I've kind of cheated already because I had them off the other night, so they're not too tight. They've been broken free recently. But you may need to put a decent sized ratchet on them to get them free. Caliper bolts are a little rusty. So there's a lock washer on them. I'm going to make sure the lock washer comes with them too. Clean these up with a wire brush. Put them aside because you'll use them. So close. Nope. So that came free. Bolt is still stuck in the knuckle. I'll get that out in a second. So yeah, this is so stuck. Come out like this. This parking brake is going to unclip. This dust shield's not doing so great. Don't want to let it hang on the hydraulic hose, but I want to get this off of here. It's much easier without the rotor in the way. So you can see it needs to come off of here. So let me see if I can get it unhooked. Oh, there we go, just like that. Now be careful with that hose. I'll let this sit like this. Get this bolt out. Kind of rusted in place. It's not threaded into the knuckle. It's supposed to be a through hole, but it's probably just so tight with rust. Switch to my electric ratchet. That's all it took. I'll clean that up. Alright, so while you have this open, I would make sure that you clean this tone ring. Just spray it with brake parts cleaner. Take a wire brush, a metal, or take a brass metal brush and clean this up so you don't have any issues with it not reading. Alright, so I'm getting ready to put the new rotor on. Get this nice one, it came painted black on the edges so it won't show rust, which is pretty cool. So I like to put them on backwards first. Clean the oil off it with the brake parts cleaner. That's all. You don't have to soak them. Down for a second before I put this on. That hub looks a little dry. Throw a little anti-seize on there. So for the next person that's going to do brakes, hopefully those rotors don't seize on there. It's caught on the brake caliper here. Dust shield that's borked. So put this up here. Kind of bend this back. a lot of noise. It's not really great. I don't think the dust shields are really available anymore for this car, so that's better. Now all I do is take a lug nut. Doesn't fall off on me. Alright, so I put a little rust prevention on here, and I got a wire brush. Just clean these threads up a bit. Do the same for both bolts. And then just wipe them off with a paper towel. And I'm going to throw some caliper grease on them to put them into the caliper bracket so they don't get rusty again. Alright, put some caliper grease on these bolts. Put the bracket in place. Get one of these caught. Okay. Same for the other one. Get this started. Finish them with a ratchet. Or I've got the electric ratchet, so I'm going to use that. I'll give it a final tighten with a wrench. Make sure those feel nice and tight. Okay. Now, I like to pull these pins out. Those look kind of dry, even though this is reman. Put some caliper grease on here. Pop them back in. Same at the bottom. Alright. Nice. Now before I get too far and put this caliper on, I'm going to undo the hydraulic line on the old caliper because I need to change it. Pull it out of there. Bring it forward so you can see it. Okay, so like that. So, it's got two copper washers, so you want to make sure they both come off. The new caliper has a new banjo fitting, so I don't need to save these bolts. So it's like one copper washer, yeah, it's on the top, and one stuck to the bottom, so I want to make sure this one comes off. Hang that back there, and just make sure it stayed with it, so you don't double gasket it. That's going to drip a little bit. not drip so much. Nope. Okay. So now you take your clips. These are the same top and bottom, so they clip into there. If you don't have new ones, you could reuse them. You just clean them up with a wire brush. So you take your pads, just spray a little, don't have to soak them, just clean the grub out, just clean the crud off of them. The wear indicator goes in the back, and you just kind of slide them in. You could put grease on the ears if you want, it's up to you. You know, OEM don't come with them, so might not need it, might need it. So it'll fit just like that. Now if you were reusing this caliper, you again, like I said, make sure that this is turned all the way in so it's fully compressed. And then it's going to sit right on top. Might have to push the slide pins in a bit. They're usually kind of tight because it's got fresh pads. Put a little caliper grease on these too, so that they don't get seized. To line them up. Whoop. These pins have little flat spots. There we go. Get them lined up. By hand. Do the same for the other one. Yikes. And there we go. These are 14 millimeters, so tighten them up. And what I forgot to do was hook the brake cable in there, parking brake cable. So let me trim these out, because if you're doing this and you're not replacing the caliper, you won't have to worry about this. But if you're replacing the caliper, you'll have to remember to do this. So don't forget, like me. So take those bolts back out. Slide this up. Find your parking brake cable, and it's going to get hooked right here. And knock one of the pads off, put it back in. This is going to go back there. This is going to go back on here. Again, push these pins in so they line up, just like that. Glad I realized that before I got too far. It happens though. It's 14mm. Tighten up. Do the same for this one. Tight a little bit more, snug them up. Okay. And to get the parking brake in here, there's a little pin that this sits in, that the ear sits in. Just like that. Also put some caliper grease on the bolt that goes in there. Make sure you get it threaded in straight, because it's kind of at an angle. You might have to move this around to help you. There we go. Nope, not quite. See? Didn't catch. Alright, feels like I got it started. That's a 14mm. Should go in nice and smooth if you got the threads caught the right way. There we go. This banjo fitting is actually an 11 on this caliper. One I took off was a 12. I have to get the copper washers that came in the box. Alright, so one copper washer is going to go here. And it'll go through. The other copper washer will go on the other side. Just like that, and that'll go into the caliper. And the line sits in these two little ears. started. So get it tight and then go a little bit more. Crush that copper so it seals. Now I realized I've put this all together, and I forgot this shim because it's kind of unusual. A lot of cars don't have shims like this, so it actually goes here. So I can pull these bolts off again, and I'm going to pop it up in there. So don't do that. Put this in before you put this together. Set your pads up in here with your clips, and then this clip, before you put your caliper on, goes up in here. I've already got this stuff attached because I forgot to put this clip in. So the long ears go towards the back, and it snaps in place. Probably push the caliper, probably push the pad off. Put that back in place. Push this down. Alright. That's better. Reinstall your bolts holding into the slide pins. Get them snugged up. Tighten up. That one tightened up. Okay. Alright, so now at this point, if you are just doing pads and rotors, you're all set. You don't have to do any bleeding. I'm going to do some bleeding. This was already dripping some fluid, so I'm going to crack the bleeder, see if it comes out. I do have a little bleed tool. Yeah, let's crack the bleeder open. I love aftermarket calipers because on the other side this was a 10. This one appears to be an 8 now. Alright, let's see here. Open this up. Put my little one-man bleeding tool on here. A little brake fluid in the bottom of it. Keeps the air from getting in. I'm going to step on the brake. Make sure I have enough in the master cylinder. Pretty good. Yeah, that looks good. Close that off. Car could use a brake fluid flush, but that's for another day. Alright, so if that's all you need to do, you can put your wheel back on, take this lug nut off, fork it up, put the car on the ground, give the pedal a couple pumps before you drive off, and you should be good to go.